The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Atlas Chiropractic Center of Escanaba, Michigan, Largent Media, or any of their affiliates or subsidiaries. The material and information presented in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Should you need medical attention or advice, seek out a licensed medical professional or facility in your area. The Tapping Into Uncomfortable with Reade Hubert DC name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service.
Welcome to Tapping Into Uncomfortable, the unpodcast for unpeople, because I am your unhost. And if you are an unperson, you will totally understand this next part, which is hands down the most important part of the unpodcast. It's known as the riff. Hey, what we're going to do today, we're going to give a little 80s hair metal shout out. Woo! Hey, I hope this verbal assault finds you well. And if not, I hope you're starting to figure it out, because what we're going to do here is, this is a huge podcast today. Actually, it's an unpodcast. But first thing we always want you to do is we want you to figure out and actually believe this, that you are wonderful, fantastic, and amazing. So check out this statistic about the eye. So if you were to take the human eye and you were to compare it to a camera, that one eye would be equal to 576 megapixels. Now you go, so what? It's 576 megapixels. Who cares? Check this out. A megapixel is 1 million pixels. We're going to go through the math with you. Check this out. So in one eye, you have 576 times 1 million pixels makes a very beautiful you. So remember that and keep doing it. So what are we going to talk about today? Today, we're going to wade into comfort. See, comfort. Number 2, we're going to talk politics for the first time. There may actually be a butt hurt warning on this, but it's something we need to talk about because it's going to totally impact your health. And third, we're going to talk about the question and answer from the last cannabis or marijuana talk on, are we giving the next generation problems by doing this? And then fourth, we're going to be doing the new Q&A. So let's get started. Let's talk about comfort in our lives. I prefer to it as a human being called see-umfort in the previous podcast. So let's talk about this. I'm a firm believer that besides water, survival, food, making babies, the major thing is comfort. And I think it's what drives us. And I don't think anybody's ever put that term on for why we're doing what we're doing, because our actual adaptation next to survival is to make our life better. So I think it's really important to see what comfort is doing in your life as it is in mine. But the big issue is, what are you doing in your life that you quest for it, that you yearn for it? And if you can bring consciousness of comfort into your life and look at these things, you got a really good chance of decreasing a remarkable amount of stress in the mental, physical, social, and spiritual realm of your life. So at this moment, what we're actually going to do, we're going to give you a minimum 10 to 15 seconds of some really nice, sweet, meditative music to get your brain right, to get it comfortable, and hopefully it stops all the noises.
The average human mind.
I want more. I deserve more. I need more. More. Give me more. You have more. Folks, comfort is actually a good emotion, and being uncomfortable is a bad emotion. So if you were to take the bad emotions of being human, what's the one thing you want to do? You want to make them good. You don't want to live in pain. You don't want to live in suffering. You don't want to live in all the new terms that we put on it, but ultimately it comes down to comfort and uncomfortable. And when you get uncomfortable, what do you do for yourself? Are you able to recognize that you constantly want to rectify to get back to comfort? What is the purpose of technology in our lives? Now, I'm not talking necessarily the tech that we have now, but if you look at its evolution, Look at everything we do builds upon each other. And why do we do that? To make it easier on us. Why? Because it makes us more comfortable. One of the greatest advancements that's going to be with the wheel and our ability to control fire is coming. And it's called artificial intelligence. Then that's going to evolve to AGI. From there, I don't know where we're going. Why is AI and AGI? Why is it created? Why is it going to make up to an 80% disruption of our life? That's what they figure it's going to do. And right now, almost everybody's using it. And you don't even know it. Try getting on and search something on the web. But now, take artificial intelligence and apply it across industries. Apply it across your life. Look at the greatest advancement and comfort we're going to have. What is that going to do to us from an adaptability standpoint? We are not going to be dependent upon ourselves. We're going to be dependent on something else. It's going to be a fascinating time in the history of humanity. So let's look at comfort from a marketing standpoint. Look at your food. Look at your water. Look at all your drinks. Everybody is what? Having fun. Could you imagine if they actually marketed something and everybody was uncomfortable? And that if you took this, you got completely uncomfortable. In fact, it's the opposite. They show uncomfortable people, but you take this drug, you now become comfortable. We are now using drugs pushed or prescribed that really have a lot to do with our lifestyle. Change, my friends, is extremely uncomfortable, especially when it's forced upon you or you don't know it was coming. It's very stressful. Let's look at comfort as it applies to our health and the mental, physical, social, and spiritual, which is where you're going to add the 4 T's of thoughts, toxins, trauma, and traits. So mental stress, uncomfortable. What do you want to do? Over a given amount of time, you'll do almost anything to get comfortable mentally. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Depends on how you do it. 2, physically. What are we doing with our food right now? We are combining food with comfort and what's happening to our weight. But we also have numerous drugs for that, which are now being abused as predicted by this podcast previously. Socially, what's going on socially with our discomfort with social media? We are extremely uncomfortable. In fact, we're getting mad at it and it's starting to backfire a little bit. But ultimately, we want to be in good social standing. And we also are going to talk about really big things because the next step we're talking about is politics. And politics, for the most part, is social. Spiritually, what I'm finding the first time in my career and almost 3 decades of taking care of humanity is we're now extremely modifying our spiritual beliefs or we're dropping them altogether. Why are we doing this? Because we're uncomfortable with their tenets or what we are told we need to believe. Ultimately, when it comes to comfort in healthcare, folks, if you're too high, you need to get low. If you're too low, you need to get higher. If you're too slow, you need to speed up. If you're too fast, you need to slow down. And one of the biggest things I can tell you, if you got more, you want to get more. Remember that. If you got more, you want to get more. We have lost sight of being grateful. One of the biggest things you can understand for yourself and your family, and one of the first requirements to just be, which is how we always end this program, is being comfortable with who, what, where, when, why, and how you are. If you can do that and apply comfort across and just consciously look at why you're doing what you're doing, you're going to see it plays a massive role because innate inside of us, that's who we actually are. It is extremely time to get uncomfortable because of the fact we are going to get into healthcare and politics because we are not afraid of getting dirty, getting uncomfortable. What's absolutely fantastic is I'm actually going to give you 2 really big words, but one of the words is 5 consonants. And I thought the other day that I was so super smart because I had a word with 5 consonants. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You do in a little kid when you clap. It's a big word until I realized so is uncomfortable. How we learn together. 2 big things I want you to see. I don't expect you to remember them, but I want you to see it because it's you, it's me, it's everybody. The number one thing I want you to see in politics and in healthcare is a term called essentialism. What a big word I'm using. But I'm using essentialism in the term of a sociology term. And ultimately, what that comes down to, folks, is birds of a feather flock together, which then brings in number 2, called confirmation bias. What that comes down to is you, I, many people have people and things around us that confirm who, what we are, what we believe. And you're going to see that throughout politics, because that's ultimately politics right now. We got left versus right, completely opposite of each other, and they all hang around each other and they poke fingers at each other. And by the way, you are stuck in the middle. So these are 2 massive organizations. Our present healthcare model is based on essentialism and confirmation bias, as well as our politics. And here's what happens, folks, is they're completely entangled together. They both have heavily grown over the last 100 to 150 years to what we have now. So a tough question for you. Because of the fact that our healthcare system relies so heavily on science, and if it's not scientifically proven, well, we don't really have much to do with that. So here's a question for you. If you went to the bathroom in the last 24 hours, we don't know scientifically how all that happens, do we? Then why are we doing it? Oh, but wait. We're heavily scientific in our system. Remember, we said we're statistically, and then we biologically, scientifically figure it out. Let's talk about politics in our healthcare system, because there's probably some changes that are coming, because what's happening right now, they're using keywords to scare everybody about some of the stuff that's happening. So I actually looked into it. What is the political influence on our healthcare system as we stand right now? The Director of Health and Human Services is appointed by the president, but the Senate has to confirm this. So every one of these major things in our healthcare system has to be ratified or has to be agreed upon by the Senate for this to happen. So we have the Director of Health and Human Services. Now check this one out. The Director of the National Institutes of Health is presidential nominee and Senate approval. But check this out about the National Institute of Health. Do you know what its national average yearly budget is? $47 billion, where everybody has a tendency to think the same, be confirmed the same. So what do you think we're doing with the $47 billion? We continue to reinforce the system that we're in. It's very difficult to change when you're thinking the same and you're acting the same and you're blended together. So if you look at that $47 billion, these are all your major grants that we give to institutions of higher learning consistently. By the way, it is the largest biomedical budget in the entire world. Absolutely fantastic. The FDA commissioner and the director of the CDC will all probably be presidential new nominees with the Senate approval. Do you think that politics has a ton to do with our healthcare system? Absolutely. Here's one of the things that we literally have to change, but we're not going to do it. We need a massive lifestyle overhaul in our healthcare system. Our healthcare system is scientific, but look at our lifestyle system. Look at what's happening to us. And it's going to get remarkably worse. But what's happened is every time we turn around, we have a pill for that. We are falling apart on lifestyle, but we don't have any interest in that with these 2 parties. Absolutely fantastic, don't you think? So what I wanted to do is show you that with healthcare, it's heavily intertwined with politics. There's no doubt about it. And you have essentialism, where you have a bunch of people who make up, this is the way we are, this is the way we operate, and this is the way it's going to be. And we will determine how we change. Then you have your confirmation bias, that when it's time to give out grants from us, we give it to the idea of what we think is scientific, even though we consistently do a ton of things that is not biologically scientific at all, but it is statistically scientific. So yes, healthcare and politics is together. But what I tell everybody, what's happening, I'm seeing in my office, everybody relax. It's going to be okay. And maybe, just maybe, we can implement a lifestyle change. I don't know. But once again, we're going to find out. Okay, folks, before we get into the question and answer, if we're heavily scientific and science is king within our healthcare system and we need a lifestyle change, check these 2 things out. Number 1, for the last 14 years, we've had a federal drug take-back program amongst the states where people can go I got these drugs laying around. I'm not using them anymore. So I'm going to hand them in, which, by the way, I think is an absolutely fantastic program. It's wonderful. How many pounds of unused drugs over 14 years do you think the states and Americans gave up? Just think about that. You have unused drugs laying around in an American home. You trade it in. How many pounds do you think? If you said 19,200,440 pounds of unused drugs over 14 years, you nailed it. And I know for a fact you people who listen to this program would absolutely know that answer. And lastly, I want to tell you a very true generic story of politics and healthcare. I'm going to keep it generic because what I don't want to do is fire you all up. It's not necessary. But here it goes. With the stroke of a pen from any of the above agencies or politicians, this is what happened before. We have a pesticide that you are not allowed to use in America except on ornamental plants because we do not want this pesticide into our food because we have found that there's problems with it. With the stroke of a pen, we are not allowed to have that pesticide on our crops in America, but we can take in crops from other countries. So it's cheaper to make these products, and the majority of Americans are now testing positive for this pesticide in blood and urine. And what's absolutely fascinating about that is one of our other political organizations within the healthcare realm decided that since it's getting into our people, we're now going to give it a safe level that you're supposed to have. Before, there was no way you were supposed to have this. Now, the majority of Americans are testing positive for it. That's what happens when you're mixing healthcare and politics. Once again, folks, what's going to happen with this pesticide in the human body? Don't know, but guess what? As long as you stay under the legal limit that was given after it was introduced, you'll be okay. Now, once again, my favorite part of the show is the question and answer. I love doing the question and answer, but first we're going to answer the question from the previous podcast, which was from the Yeah But. And if there's any of you left after the marijuana talk, let's answer this. The question is, are we handing our children generational thinking? Are you ready? Here it comes. In fact, we're going to do a drum roll right now. And the answer is yes. All right, moving on to the next question and answer. We are absolutely going to be brutal. Here it comes. Are you ready? If healthcare is forced upon you via laws, is that okay? You know, I haven't had much of a laugh in here. That, my friends, is tough. But we will try to answer that next podcast. So as always, I want you to be happy. I want you to be healthy. And I want you to just be. This whole podcast is based on a book. Be on the lookout for 4 T's to a Better You, a blueprint for identifying and addressing the 4 causes of sickness. You'll be able to buy it just about everywhere.